You won't believe the dark side of loyalty in love. When we think about loyalty in love, we often picture devotion, trust, and unbreakable bonds. But what happens when loyalty starts to feel more like a cage than a connection? What if, in trying to hold on to someone, we end up losing ourselves? Ava had always believed in loyalty. She believed that love was about standing by your partner through thick and thin, no matter what. She thought that love meant sacrifice, that you'd endure the hard times for the person you loved. But everything changed one fateful night when Lucas, the man she thought she'd spend her life with, shattered her world. For months, Ava had been planning the future she and Lucas would build together. They had talked about marriage, about traveling the world, about growing old side by side. But then came that night. The night Lucas didn't come home. It was unlike him. The silence gnawed at her all evening, and when his phone finally rang, Ava knew something was wrong. Lucas had been unfaithful. The betrayal hit Ava like a punch to the gut. How could the person she loved, the person she had been loyal to, betray her so deeply? She felt foolish for believing that their love was invincible. The trust they had built, the loyalty she had given so freely, had been broken in an instant. And what hurt even more was how Lucas tried to explain it away. It was a mistake, he said. But for Ava, the damage was done. The relationship they had shared was no longer the same. Ava didn't know what to do with herself. She could have chosen to forgive him, to try and repair the relationship, but something deep inside told her that loyalty wasn't about staying with someone who had hurt her. It was about staying true to herself. She needed time to process everything, to figure out who she was without him. The days following Lucas's betrayal were dark and heavy. Ava cried herself to sleep many nights, hoping that somehow the hurt would go away. But as the weeks passed, she started to notice something. Her pain wasn't just from Lucas's betrayal. It was also from the fact that she had lost sight of who she was in the process of loving him. "I've spent so long waiting for someone else to make me happy," she wrote in her journal one night. "Maybe it's time I figure out how to do that for myself." That thought became the turning point for Ava. No longer was she willing to let someone else define her happiness. She started taking small steps to reclaim her life, to rebuild herself from the ground up. She went to art galleries by herself. She treated herself to dinner at restaurants she had always wanted to try. And she even picked up an old hobby, painting. Through these acts, Ava rediscovered who she was without needing anyone else to validate her. One evening, while reading in her apartment, Ava realized that there was a spark inside her that had been extinguished for far too long. She had always dreamed of writing a book, but she'd convinced herself it was too late, or that she wasn't good enough. But now, in the quiet of her solitude, Ava took out a notebook and started writing. She wrote about love, about loss, about rediscovering yourself after being betrayed. As the months went by, Ava's life took on a new rhythm. She joined a hiking group, made new friends, and found herself dating again. This time, not out of desperation, but because she was open to exploring connections on her own terms. Ethan, a graphic designer she met on one of her hikes, was unlike anyone she had dated before. He didn't try to win her over with grand gestures. Instead, he listened, he understood, and most importantly, he respected her. But Ava wasn't ready to jump into another relationship. She needed time to heal completely. "I'm not there yet," she told Ethan one evening. "I'm still figuring things out." He smiled kindly. "I understand. Take your time. I'll be here when you're ready." Ava appreciated his patience. She had spent so long chasing after love, putting her loyalty into people who didn't deserve it, that now she was learning to be loyal to herself. It wasn't about waiting for someone to complete her. It was about finding someone who would complement the life she was building on her own. Then, months later, Ava found herself in a situation she hadn't expected. She was at a mutual friend's wedding when she saw Lucas standing across the room. The sight of him brought back a flood of memories of the life they once shared, the future they had planned. But Ava didn't feel sadness. She didn't feel longing. She felt free. Lucas approached her hesitantly. "Ava, can we talk?" Ava studied him for a moment. She didn't feel anger or bitterness. She simply nodded. "I owe you an apology," Lucas began, "for everything. For the way I treated you, for breaking your trust. You didn't deserve any of it." Ava looked at him, her gaze steady. "You're right. I didn't deserve it. But I've made peace with it. I've moved on." Lucas seemed taken aback. "You've changed," he said softly. "I had to," Ava replied. "Loyalty is important, but loyalty to yourself comes first. I've learned that." Lucas nodded, his face reflecting regret. "I'm glad you're okay. You deserve happiness." Ava smiled faintly. "I hope you find it too." With that, she turned and walked away, leaving the past and Lucas behind her. Loyalty is a powerful thing. It can make you feel secure, loved, and supported. But when that loyalty is misplaced, when it's given to someone who doesn't honor it, it becomes a burden. Ava's story is a reminder that sometimes the most important loyalty is the one you show to yourself. There are times in life when the hardest thing to do is let go of someone you love. But when you choose to walk away, when you choose to prioritize your own well-being, you make room for a life that's truly your own. A life that's not defined by the mistakes of the past, but by the possibilities of the future. So, if you found Ava's story inspiring and relatable, don't forget to subscribe to Echoes of Emotion for more stories that dive into the heart of love, loss, and self-discovery. If you enjoyed this video, check out the next one to hear more stories that inspire and leave you thinking long after they've ended.